Welcome to another episode of In Your Business. Today we're going to meet with an entrepreneur that just is a delight to interview with because she's just full of energy. That's what I like to find in entrepreneurships. I like to find somebody who's just excited and just somebody who wants to go out and just change the world. And that's what we've got today with Lauralee. Lauralee, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So Lauralee, why don't you tell us just a little bit about the business, like the name, where it's operating from, and then we're going to go in and get to know you as the entrepreneur and come back to the business.
All right, sounds great. So I started Stratavise Consulting in 2017, and we focus on strategic planning and helping businesses execute.
Okay, so we're going to come back to that, but before we do, I want to get to know you because
Great.
I always think that's an important part of the entrepreneur. Okay?
Sure.
So where did you grow up?
Right here in Wayne County. I actually technically grew up in Ohio, went to National Trail, but really been in Wayne County all of my life.
Great. So as a young girl, you had to have some dreams. You had to be thinking, okay, when I get to be an adult, this is what I'm going to do. So what was that?
I wanted to be a comedian, a stand-up comedian. I watched Carol Burnett, I watched Benny Hill. I would stage my brother and sister, and they were my audience, and I would put on shows, and all I wanted to be was a comedian. I ended up in the mortgage business and started writing mortgage loans, but I wanted to be a comedian.
We're not going to get away from that for a minute. So you want to be a comedian. I've yet to have somebody come on and say that to me. So yeah. Did you try it? Did you do it?
I didn't, and I think about it a lot. Like, I wonder if I could write my own material. It's so funny. I used to watch Rodney, was it Dangerfield? No.
I mean, I know who that is.
Yeah,
but
I would watch Carol Burnett over and over, and Benny Hill over and over. Back when we had like VHS tapes, and I would put it in there and record it and watch the comedians over and over, and then I would practice, and then I would say, okay, to my brother and sister, like, I'm going to put on a show now, and then I would stand up and wrote my own material, and yeah. I was convinced I was going to be a comedian all the way up until I was in high school, and then I was like, okay, maybe I'm not going to be a comedian.
That's great. I really like Jerry Seinfeld. So,
yes, I love watching any live audio. I guess, think about improv is great, going to the Funny Bone, something like that. I just love watching comedians.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we got to pass that dream, and,
Yes.
and your siblings having to participate. But so then you went into school, and when was it that you decided that you're not going to be a comedian and you're going to have to start looking at something else?
It's kind of a funny story. It's funny how life just is so unexpected, and you just meet people along the journey, and you end up doing something you totally did not expect. I was a debt collector, the world's worst job, I'm pretty sure. Debt collecting was terrible. And the transition to the internet was starting, and I was let go. So I scrambled, and I called my husband's best friend, and I said, hey, I need work. I have a newborn child at the time. This has been almost 20 years ago. And he said, my sister is a manager at a mortgage company. Do you know how to write loans? And I was like, well, I bought a house. We had just bought a house like 6 months before that. I'm like, I know how to do this. I bought a house. And so he's like, okay. So I went to work for a subprime lender and started selling interest rates at like 12% and started in sales. And I was like, okay, this is kind of a cool gig. I like being in sales. And eventually I went to work for a very large Fortune 100 bank and worked my way up. For many years, I was in that organization.
That's great.
Yeah.
Schooling, did you, when you went to college, what was your concentration?
In business, and I took a non-traditional path.
Okay.
I went from high school right into work, and then thought, oh, wait a minute, I probably should go do something else. So I started at Ivy Tech, got my 2-year degree, and then when I knew that I was going to focus on business and really said I'm going to go into consulting, I finished up my 4-year degree at IU East.
Very good.
Yeah, and traveled 3 weeks out of the month when I did it, did homework from hotels, thank goodness for online classes, and pushed all the way through. Probably took me 4 or 5 years to get the last 2 years going part-time, but I appreciated it so much more having been an adult.
Well, see, I think that's great because that just tells us that education comes in all ways. I mean,
Yes.
hands-on as well as in the classroom, but also you can do it at any point in your life.
Yep, I completely agree. What I think was great for me is that I was growing my career at the same time as I was a college student, so that I was able to actually implement and deploy the things that I learned.
Sure.
So it was like, okay, I'm studying strategy, now I'm learning about it, now I'm going to go and actually use the things I just learned in my next conference call or in my next meeting or whatever. So there was no delay for me. It was literally, I can't say that I applied statistics, but all the other business classes, I was literally applying what I was learning.
Okay. So I'm going to transition here a bit and ask, so when do you think you became an entrepreneur?
I would say technically I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur for many, many years, and I started officially on my own in 2018. I had done it for a while, like I would put my toe in it, and I was working with clients, but I was still hanging on to my old job, my security blanket that I guess today we call it kind of the gig economy or side hustle. And I had my side hustle going on, but I still had my security blanket. I wasn't ready to let go. And then finally in 2018, I'm like, I don't need the security blanket. I've built my business up. I had multiple clients and I've had the experience. I just said, I'm taking the leap. I'm jumping. I'm just going to do it. And I just did.
So you jumped out of that secure position into true entrepreneurship.
I said goodbye to a nice 401k and benefits and nice salary, but I also said goodbye to stress and conference calls 8 hours a day and traveling constantly and not getting to pick when I wanted to travel. And I said goodbye to compliance projects that were not for me. They were not a good fit for me. So there were great things I said goodbye to, but there were a lot of other things that I'm like, ugh. And I felt like I lost 50 pounds on the first day as an entrepreneur. I'm like, oh, no one is telling me where I have to be. I get to just be where I want to go. And it was very exciting.
That is.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I hear that often with entrepreneurs because, I mean, it's a part of being independent.
Yeah.
Okay. And you have to make decisions, but it's not easy.
No, I'm so dependent on my calendar. And for me, it was very easy for me to spend 6 hours a day on conference calls. And it was draining. And the first day of not having that, at first I was really scared. I thought, oh my gosh, in 2 weeks, I'm not going to get a paycheck. That was reality setting in. But then the comfort of knowing that I had started 6, 7 years ago, slowly building my client base, doing things for free. I've done more strategic planning sessions for free than probably anyone else I know. Practicing, learning, understanding my customers, understanding their needs, really all the things that we teach people, I was deploying all those same tactics, like understanding what my customer needs, how am I going to reach my customer, what's the best way to market to them, what are my services, all of those things. I spent probably 6 years doing.
Yeah.
And now I finally took the leap and was like, I can do this on my own.
Well, this is a lot of fun for me because basically what you referenced was both of us being teachers. We're both instructors.
Yes,
I'm in a college classroom and you're in a boardroom.
Yep.
I mean, you're showing these companies how to do it. And it's awesome.
Exactly. It's, when you remove yourself, even for me, even though I work with clients and I coach clients, I still need somebody to work with me and coach because I want to step out and look at my business differently, right? And so when you work in that business every day, you don't see what somebody from the outside sees. So even though I work with, all different size businesses, all different types of businesses today, I still need somebody to look at my business and say, okay, have you thought about this? What about this service? How do you package this service? How do you price this service? All of the things that I'm doing for somebody else, I still want somebody to look that outsider's perspective. And I think that's what consulting really brings, is an outsider's perspective.
Sure. I think it's interesting. I'm just enjoying hearing you talk because the many things you're discussing are the things we teach you in the classroom.
Yes.
And as you were working on your business degree, and I know you brought that later into your career, but as you were working in your business degree, you have to remember you had to have the accounting and you had to have the finance and you had to have the management and you had speech.
Yep.
You had history. You had all these classes and you had to wonder, why am I taking a writing class? I want to be a business major, okay? Maybe you were struggling with one of your other business classes and thinking, that's not what I'm going to go into.
You're exactly right. You're so right in this. It makes you well-rounded. And so those things that I did learn along the way, I am absolutely deploying. So when you talk about the speech class, getting up and presenting, I had to do that for 14 years in a row, presenting, teaching, facilitating, all of those things. If I had not taken a class to help me get over the fear of standing up in front of people and actually talking to people, I might not have gotten through those 14 years. So you're right. You look at, do I want to be an accounting major? No, but I need to understand profit and loss. I need to understand how important it is to have accounts receivable. And today I invoice clients and I have to balance the account and work with my accountant. I have to have basic understanding of how taxes work and all those things. So I look at it like it is the more well-rounded you are, the more of the things that you bring in the experiences, which really make it better, I think, instead of one single discipline. Does that make
Sure,
sense?
it does, absolutely. What I want to do now, though, is some people watching may not truly understand your business yet. So I want to make sure that we come around to that. So let's talk about your business, not only when you started it and how you started it, but let's also talk about what is it?
Sure.
What do you do?
So I think that I took the path that most entrepreneurs do, and that is you have an evolution. You really start doing one thing, and as you evolve and get better and better and better, it may end in something different. So when I look back, when I started, I guess I would call my side hustle and started consulting on the side to better understand my services, I worked with a different type of business than I work with today. So I started with nonprofits. I began with nonprofits and helping them with project management and some marketing stuff. And then I moved into strategic planning and doing it all for free. Then I started working with small businesses, and my first client was a restaurant. And I learned how to write a proposal. I learned how to bring in a focus group. I learned how to market for a restaurant. I learned what is scope of work. So what am I actually going to help them do, and what are things that I'm not going to help them do? So over those years, I kind of perfected what my services, and again, evolution over time. Today, I really focus on leadership development. I focus on helping them with their teams work better together, and then ultimately strategic planning. I fundamentally believe that whether you are a three-man shop or you are a Fortune 100 company, they all have very similar challenges, and that is, do I have a plan? Do I follow and execute against that plan? And I find more often than not, a lot of businesses don't. They may have it in their head, they may be thinking about, I want to go this direction, or I want to go that direction, but at the end of the day, they see strategic planning as something they have to do, and they put it into a PowerPoint and they put it on the shelf.
Sure.
And I really work with them on how do you bring that to life within the organization? How do you make culture change? How do you engage your employees in that strategic plan? And that's essentially the evolution of my business.
So when you're working with a business, do you work primarily with the owner, the management team, or do you work with the entire everybody, all the personnel?
It depends on the size of the organization. So I have a client today that's about 500 employees. It's a manufacturing client. I work with their leadership team. I have an assigned person that's in marketing that I work with. I also have another client that's a small organization. They're about 50 people. I work with the C-suite, and then they also have signed somebody to work with me. And that person could be somebody that's going to show me the back end, show me their website, show me how their organization runs. They're really that connection, but I meet regularly with the C-suite team because really that's the decision maker, and they're the ones that's driving the change in the organization.
Sure, sure. So I want to go back in the very beginning with you, though, as you started your own company. Sole proprietor, partnership, corporation?
I started as a sole proprietor. I moved into an LLC, and today I have contractors that I work with. So when I have projects that are outside my scope or larger than what I can work on, I will bring in different contractors to help do the work, and I 1099 those people. So they may work with me for 3 weeks on one particular, for example. I may get a bunch of reports and information gathering from a client, and I want to turn that into something that's digestible.
Sure.
I will turn that over to a contractor. They'll create it for me, give it back to me, and they invoice me and I pay them. So for me, an LLC works. I hope my growth plan, though, is to have W-2 staff, and when I do that, I'm going to move into maybe an S-corp or something like that.
So currently you're a one-person operation, is that correct?
I am.
But you bring in subcontractors, if you will.
Yes.
Okay.
The scope of work really changes to meet a client's needs. I have to look at what expertise I bring and then what my team brings. So for example, I may bring in somebody that's for marketing that just works on the marketing piece, and I may work on the engagement piece or the culture piece or strategic planning. I could also bring somebody in that maybe works on documentation. So if there's a lot of writing involved and again, reports, I may actually have an analyst that I bring in that will go out and get third-party data for me and put it into something that's digestible, but I don't need them on every project. So I outsource all of that.
Wow. You have a lot going on.
Yeah, I do, but it's fun. It's fun. I love working with clients, and I love watching the light bulb moment. Like, oh, that's such a great idea, or that's something we can deploy, or their excitement when they are thinking about, oh, we're going to grow our business this way. Or for a great example would be we had a client that sent us over some feedback the other day from their executives, and they were like, hey, we're seeing the engagement grow, and she was so excited, and you could just, when I talked to her on the phone, you could just hear her excitement.
Sure.
And to me, that's exciting. Like, she's winning, I'm winning. It's great. It's a great partnership.
That's great. So I can tell you're passionate about your entrepreneurship.
I am.
You truly are.
It took a long time. It took a long time to finally make that jump, Tim.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, I did it.
So what has been the greatest part of it? What's that one thing that you would have to say stands out?
Not being on conference calls day after day, hour after hour. My entire life was built around conference calls. I don't miss that. And I miss, I'm thankful and grateful for the flexibility that I have. So my mom had to have surgery. I didn't have to check with anybody to take the day off. I just took the day off and meet with clients another day. So I love owning my schedule.
And I think that's important, though, for people to know that just because you're an entrepreneur doesn't mean you can just like take the day off. You have to still be organized. You have to be able to schedule appointments to where that day's clear, but you don't have to ask anybody if you can clear that day.
I didn't have to ask. Exactly. I think the fundamentals of business I brought over are, I am still disciplined. Everything's in my calendar. I have a plan. I have my own strategic plan. I have goals. I have objectives. I have my mind map that sits to the right of my desk that tells me where am I going, who are my target clients, how do I reach those clients. The things that I work with other companies on, I do myself. So my days are not willy-nilly. It's not, I have no idea what I'm doing on Monday. My days are very planned and very intentional on how I work through my day and how I work with each one of my clients.
Sure. How do you set up your hours?
How I bill my clients or how I set up my calendar?
Your hours. So what hours are you available? What are you open?
One thing that I did as a new entrepreneur is that I take a half day off on Fridays. So I end at noon. I don't work with clients. That's my downtime to just think, and it's my creative time. Maybe I'm working on a speaking engagement, something like that. Friday afternoons are my time. And then other than that, I work Monday through Friday morning, and I work with clients on site. I have a client in the South that I'll be traveling down to Atlanta and meeting with them so that I could be gone 3 days for that particular client. But normally I'm, like everybody else, Monday through Friday for my work. But I still work on the weekends. I worked on Sunday for a little bit, but then I get to decide. Maybe I'm not going to work on, Tuesday morning for whatever reason.
Sure. But that's a question I ask all entrepreneurs that come on the show, and that's how many hours do you think you work in a week?
Oh, I definitely work more than 40 hours now when I think about what I do in the evenings or what I do on Saturday mornings. But the energy is different, if that makes sense. So when you think about working 50 hours when I was in corporate America, it was very draining. And I didn't enjoy some of the work I was doing. Some of the work was great, but over my tenure, my last 3 years, I'd moved into work that was not bringing me the type of joy that I wanted. So working now more than 40 hours, it's work that you enjoy, you're passionate about it, so it's not work anymore. You're having fun, and I'm trying to solve really complex problems for clients, and I'm doing a lot of research, and I'm reading different journals and different studies. That to somebody would be very boring.
Sure.
To me, I'm very excited about it because I'm like, I'm going to solve this problem for my client. I need to understand what research has been done, what studies have been done, all of that. That's exciting. That's no longer work for me. Okay. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
Now, but you've shared with me the greatest parts of it, but tell me about the risk. Tell me about what some of the biggest risks going into it for you.
There's risk in all different types of risks. So the first one is you don't know where your next client's coming from. So for me, I'm thinking about 3 to 6 months ahead. Am I doing the things that I need to do to bring business in? The other risk is litigation. So I'm in an industry where if my advice is bad or the work doesn't, their business doesn't grow, I'm in a position of litigation. They can come back and sue me. So I had to get E&O insurance. I have to protect myself. There's also the risk in not saving for 401k and all the things that came very traditional. I had to be very intentional and say, okay, I'm not going to stop saving just because I no longer work for a big company. I'm going to continue to save. So I had to look at all of those things. That's a risk too. I've met many entrepreneurs that put off saving because they started and they were like, I can't find the money for it. And I'm like, I don't want to make that mistake. I want to be very purposeful in ensuring that the things I did before, I'm doing today. I run my calendar, I still save, I still have to have benefits, all of those things I wanted to be sure I brought over. Does that make sense? The risk is still there, but I wanted to make sure I brought it over.
It's exactly what great entrepreneurs do, though, because you have to run your business as a business.
Yes.
And I mean, you have to set your hours, you have to say, I'm going to work, and even if you're just sitting there, you're working. I mean,
there is never a dull moment, Tim. If I found a time where I'm just sitting at my desk like I have nothing to do, I don't know what that would be like. Every day I come in, I'm like, I have 5,000 things to do, and I have to prioritize. The other risk that's involved for me specifically, it's not with every entrepreneur, but for mine, you have to invoice and wait for clients to pay. Well, you're working whether the client's paid or not. I've already started an engagement. So there's risk there. A client could say, you know what, I've worked with you for 30 or 45 days and we're not going to pay you. We've decided, this isn't going to work. There's risk in that as well. But I think the rewards outweigh the risk when I think about it.
So let's talk about that a little bit, though, because that's got to be something that's difficult. And that's 45 days into it, you've got a lot of work into it, you've done some great things, and they say, well, I'm not going to pay you.
That is the risk that you assume by starting. Most of my clients, I've had many conversations leading up to the engagement starting. We already have a relationship and a rapport. Sure. They know how I work, they understand my process, I've shared that with them. And at the end of the day, I have to go in it with, I understand their expectations. We have aligned on our agreement, our scope of work, and move forward with the assumption that they're going to pay. And I haven't had anybody not pay me, but at the end of the day, it's still a risk. I have to consider that risk.
You see, where I was going with that is it's interesting. As I teach entrepreneurship, we're in a classroom. We can have all the simulations you want, okay? We can say, okay, what are you going to do when you come in this morning and it's snowing?
Yep.
It's not just about wearing your boots and your hat. It's also about making sure the sidewalk's clear and those type of things. But what about when people don't pay you? Are you prepared to take legal action?
Yes. So we have a contract sign that basically states that I can take legal action against you. If you don't pay me, I will pursue that. I've not had that happen, but it is in my contract. And I would say for any entrepreneur, it's alignment of expectations, whether it's a customer, and for me, it's my clients. But at the end of the day, we have to align on expectations. You should know me, I should know you. You should know what to expect from me, and I know what to expect from you. Sure. And being very transparent and open and honest reduces that risk. And to me, it reduces barriers too. I want all of my clients to feel like they can tell me anything, and that if I'm not meeting their expectation, they should tell me. And if I'm having challenges, I tell them. I think every entrepreneur should understand their customers to that degree too. Understand the services that they're providing. Are they meeting your customer's expectation? Because that's where, when there's a disconnect, that's when your customers don't come back, or in my instance, they don't pay.
Sure. Well, it's quite interesting for me to have this conversation with you, get to know your business and understand your business. But I have to ask, I want you to think back about when you were in school, when you were sitting in that accounting class or that finance class or that marketing class, whatever class it might be. Were you ever thinking you were going to be in this business doing this?
I thought when I was in those classes, the answer is yes. I knew I was going into consulting, and I'll tell you, I hope we have enough time. I'll tell you a really quick story. Okay, so in 2002, I was a mortgage loan officer, somebody that meant a great deal to me. He was the first person to send me business. He was new to being a realtor. I was new being mortgage loan officer, and he comes into my office, and I said, what did you used to do before you were a realtor? And he said, I used to be a consultant. And I said, a consultant? Now I'm in my early 20s, Tim. It's been a long time ago. And I said, what's a consultant do? And he said, well, I go in and I help companies turn around. And I said, like, you fix companies? And he said, yeah, when I go in and evaluate their business and help them turn around. I spent 45 minutes questioning him all about PricewaterhouseCoopers, all about the consulting industry, and he walks out of my office, and this is true, I stood up and I said, I don't know what a consultant is, but that's what I'm going to be. I am going to be what he is, and I'm going to fly all over the country. And within 2 years, I started my path and started consulting, got in leadership development, learning and development, strategic planning, started working with the highest levels of the organization, and I really made that idea come to life. It took me years to do it, but when I was in school, I was very intentional, had a conversation with the Dean of Business and said, how do you be a consultant? And I kid you not, and I think you know the Dean I'm referring to, hands me a book that tells me how to write proposals to be a consultant. He's like, you need to start here, you need to know how to write a proposal. I still have that book on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
All these years later.
I do know the Dean you were speaking of, and we talked about it, and you said that David France was one of your mentors, and you know,
I adore him.
you couldn't find a better one.
No,
I
I think that too.
Yeah.
And I think back to that conversation, I had no idea what I was doing, but over time, I've gotten, you know, you perfect over time and you really get comfortable being uncomfortable, and I think that's what enabled me to be a great consultant and work with clients, is I got very comfortable being uncomfortable in front of executives that made, you know, 50 times what I made at the time, and you have to hold your own, and
Sure.
all of those learning experiences really brought me to where I am today over almost 20 years.
Lauralee, you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Keep
Thank
doing
you.
it.
Thank you.
Doing it. This concludes another episode of In Your Business. Today we met with Lauralee Hites, and Lauralee is just doing an outstanding job. She's got the energy, she's got the talent, she's got everything it takes to work with these companies. And you know, she talked about, you know, comfort and being uncomfortable and then becoming comfortable, and I can tell she's comfortable with working with any businesses. What a unique entrepreneur, and she's doing a great job. Thanks again for watching In Your Business.